Now, have a look in your fridge. Now, go on then. Right, how fresh is the food in there? There's a new warning suggesting 3/4 of us are just too blasé about eating out-of-date food. And a third of us are not averse to shamelessly serving it to our family on the quiet. What they don't know won't hurt them. Well, is that true, though? A snapshot poll of over 2,000 people released by the Food Standards Agency shows that it's the 55 to 75-year-olds who are the worst culprits. May you blush? Least likely to check food used by dates. 90% of 55 to 75 said, no, don't check it. Well, what do? Well, I do that, don't I? I rely on the sniff food test to decide if it's safe to eat. Stroud GP Dr. Dawn Harper joins us. She's concerned, I'm sure, but perhaps not surprised. You're not surprised, Dawn?
Good morning, Anna. A little surprised by the amount of confusion, to be fair. So in this poll from the Food Standards Agency, around half people said they didn't completely understand the difference between use-by dates and best before dates. So I think, to be fair to the public, a lot of people might be using food which they shouldn't be because they're not completely clear. So one of the reasons that I'm working with them today is to say, right, let's make it very clear what the differences are. A best before date, Anna, is all about quality. So if you've got, for example, sugar or flour in your cupboard and it's a month or two past its best before date, it's probably absolutely safe to use. It just may not taste as good, and the quality of the food that you prepare with it may not be as good, but it's not a health concern. The use by date is totally different. That is all about safety, and those dates are scientifically calculated. And what those dates mean is that you should be using that food by midnight on that date. And if you use it after that, you could potentially be putting your health, or as you've pointed out, other people's health at risk. And unfortunately, in this poll, Gloucestershire didn't come out too well on that. So around 40% of us here in this county would be prepared to serve food past its use-by date to our loved ones. Now, the thing is that food past its use-by date may well contain bacteria that could be harmful to our health. And we see around 2.5 million cases of food poisoning here in the UK every year. For most of us, Anna, it just leaves you locked into the bathroom and not able to leave your house and feeling lousy, and takes a few days out of your diary. Nothing more. But for some, for the very vulnerable, that'll be the very young or the elderly or people with pre-existing health conditions, it can even be fatal. We have 180 deaths a year from food poisoning. So we really are gambling with our own health and the health of those we care about if we don't take use-by dates seriously.
Yes, and I mean, as I say, food poisoning, people it's a bit like when they say flu or something. They bandy around, oh, I had food poisoning, I was off for the day. If you have been, if you've got food poisoning, you're not going anywhere for a period of time, and you can feel, I only ever had it once. Oh, my stars, I felt so ill. And long past, probably a day or two after, I thought, there is nothing left, this is it. There is nothing left, within my body. It was still coming. I mean, it was, it's grim. And
not
the point
nice.
As you say, not nice at all. But as you say, if it's a vulnerable person, then really that you are dicing potentially with really serious consequences. And if you're doing the cooking, they don't even know, do they? You've got to trust that the person who's cooking you the meal is doing their due diligence. Shall we call it that?
Yeah, and I do appreciate that. I know, particularly at the moment, Anna, a lot of people are really feeling the squeeze financially, and that may mean that you might be tempted, rather than to waste food, to perhaps push those use-by dates. But what I would say is, absolutely, nobody wants to see food waste, but with a little bit of forward planning, actually, just checking those dates in your fridge, making sure that, of course, you're storing your food appropriately. So if it's supposed to be in a fridge, keep it in a fridge, so that you know that use-by date is an appropriate date. And just planning your meals to use the food that's going to go past its use-by date more quickly. So perhaps even if you've got a freezer, if you know that you're not going to use a food by its use-by date and it's freezable, pop it in the freezer. But then, of course, when you defrost it, plan to use it within 24 hours of defrosting so that you know that you're using food that's safe, you're not wasting any food. Actually get into the habit, I just check my fridge before I go shopping to the supermarket so I know what I've got, what's coming close to its use-by date, and then can do my shopping accordingly. So we can all do our bit just to keep ourselves that little bit safer. And I think really the important message here is that use-by dates are exactly what the label says. They're not to be pushed a little bit. Unfortunately, one of the results in the polls talking about 80% of people who will use that sniff test. So you just have a sniff, and if it sniffs okay, you think, oh, well, it's okay, I'll be all right for another couple of days.
Fine. It's fine. Yeah.
Unfortunately, not all bacteria will produce an odour. So looking or sniffing food, or tasting it, and if it sort of tastes okay, that's probably all right. That's not the way to go. By all means, use those on best before dates. I'm happy with that because that is purely about quality. But when it comes to use-by dates, they are absolutely what they say, and we shouldn't be tempted to push the limits by sniffing something and assuming that if it smells okay, it's probably okay, because it may well not be.
Yeah, that's a good bit of advice there about the bacteria. Not all bacteria produce a smell. That's a good piece of advice to recognise and remember. I was thinking whenever you go to a supermarket or a shop where there's food, they always stack it in a way so that if there is different dates on a product in one aisle or something, they always put the closest dates at the front, and they will move it back so that that one goes first, and then there's the later dates. So we could do a lot worse than doing that in our fridge, couldn't we? If it works so well for health there, it's something that we can adopt and perhaps should be adopting.
Absolutely, and that is all about making sure that food is used sequentially so that we're not wasting food. Nobody wants to think about food waste in current times, but at the same time, we do need to be mindful of safety. So adopting that as a policy in our own fridges actually would be a really good way to start.
Right, we have been told, and thank you very much, for it's the straightforwardness actually that you think wouldn't provide the confusion. Thank you so much to Dr. Dawn Harper there in Stroud, then the GP, for just making a bit of clarity there. If you're in any doubt, which it seems that we were, use by is, as it says, use by. Do not mess around with that date. That is a firm date. If it's best before, okay, you can do a lot more variation, but use by is used by that date, and hopefully just a little bit more focus on reading that and using it in advance of that use by date will help prevent food waste as well. And that sniff test don't always work. Just be aware that could leave you in a very perilous position, frankly. Thank you, Dawn. Lovely to speak to you.
And you, Anna. Take care. Look after yourself.
Very well. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.